Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a very fun video for you guys. We are going to be testing out an eyeshadow brand that is considered a cult favorite that I have not yet tried. I've actually been meaning to try out this brand for several years and we're finally getting around to it today. I figured as a self-professed eyeshadow lover, it was about time we did that. So we're gonna do it today. We're gonna do a first impressions of this brand. We'll talk a bit about this brand. I'll show you guys the palette, some swatches, and then we're gonna be doing kind of two looks. I'm gonna do a day look and then transform that into a more smoky nighttime look and see what I think. Am I going to become a member of this cult? We shall see. Before we get into the eyeshadow palette, a very special welcome to any of my new viewers here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that you'll consider subscribing. Also make sure your notifications are turned on. And with that said, I am sure I have piqued your curiosity, so let's have a look at the eyeshadow palette. All right, so the brand that I am talking about is Viseart. Is it Viseart or Viseart? I think I've heard it said both ways. Members of the cult out there, set me straight. So this brand has been around for a long time. It's been an old favorite of many makeup lovers. I've talked about them a few times on my channel, and anytime I talk about them, I get very conflicting opinions from my regular viewers. Some of you have said you love them. Some of you had said, was not that impressed. But one thing I think is interesting about this brand is anytime I do like a year-end ranking video or any sort of eyeshadow palette favorites video, I inevitably get a comment or two from someone that is like, outraged that Viseart does not appear in my rankings. So I went on Beautylish finally this week and I picked out an eyeshadow palette and we're gonna give this brand a try today. So the palette that I went with, let me just start off by saying it's one of their Petite Pro palettes, which I've heard are very small. And I'm not opposed to a small palette, but I was surprised at how small this thing really is. So here it is right here. This is the palette that I picked up. This is the Viseart. I'm just going with Viseart, guys. I'm sorry. Gotta pick one. This is the San Francisco Etoile palette. It's actually a really cute, tiny little palette. This thing was $33 on the Beautylish website. And let's just have a look at the actual shadows inside. So here they are. I'm going to insert a close-up for you guys of the actual palette and also some swatches on my arm. They are very, very small. These pan sizes are tiny. I'm not sure I own any in my collection, maybe with the exception of the Pat McGrath Midnight Voyage palette that I've self-titled the Polly Pocket palette that has shades or pan sizes quite this small. Now there was a time that would really bother me when I had a smaller eyeshadow palette collection when I was not as much of a makeup collector as I am now. It doesn't bother me as much now because I know I will probably never go through this entire palette even if I really end up loving it because I just have such a large collection. However, if you are someone that really values bang for your buck when it comes to good quality eyeshadow, even if these are pretty good, you're gonna burn through these awfully fast. So that is one thing to consider when thinking about the price point. Even though sticker tag is not massive, $33, I kind of think it's like mid-range. So a couple things I wanted to note. So I looked at some of the Viseart palettes on Sephora's website. Their selection is very minimal. They don't have a lot of palettes to pick from on Sephora's website. If you want to really pick through what Viseart has to offer, Beautylish is the place to go. They have a whole lot more palettes on the Beautylish website. But one thing I thought was really interesting, I was reading through reviews on both Sephora and Beautylish, and it seemed like the Beautylish reviews, for the most part, were very, very good. My guess is if you're a Viseart palette lover, collector, you probably buy them from Beautylish because the selection is a lot better. And maybe that's why the reviews were so good. I think across the board, they pretty much all had nearly 5-star reviews. And I can't remember how many reviews each of them have. I want to say like 70. However, over on Sephora's website, a couple of the palettes had like 4.5 star reviews. And then a few other palettes I noticed had like 2 or 3-star reviews. So it seems like there's a bit of a disparity there. I'm curious to see what I end up thinking about these. I am pretty open-minded. I'm not like too mad about the price point of these. I think this one in particular I picked because it looked like a good starting point as far as the color range, good range from light to dark, matte to shimmer. I love this pop of like teal green, which I always love a shade like this, especially if I'm wanting to do something really smoky. So I thought this would be a fun one to start with. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have the rest of my makeup on today. I will link everything that I'm wearing down below. So I'm gonna zoom you guys in a bit and we will get started with the first eyeshadow look. All right, so we're gonna get started with this shade right here, this light matte brown. I'm gonna take my Persona blending brush. We're gonna start by running that up through the crease. So far, really pigmented, easy to blend. We're gonna take that same shade on the back side of that brush. This is the ply side, this little flatter brush. And we're going to build that up along the lower lash line. All right, now I want to go to that shade directly above that, still a matte. This one's a little bit darker. It's not quite as dark as this shade in the corner here, but I want to add just a little bit of that right through the crease just at the outer corner, just to add a tiny bit of depth. I don't want to go too dark yet. We're going to wait and go really smoky for the second half of this video, for the second look, the nighttime look. Okay, so there we have it so far. Very impressed with these mattes. You can tell they're very good quality. They kind of remind me of the quality of the NARS shadows, which I do really like. I know I kind of complained about my one NARS eyeshadow palette because it was so expensive. I know that sounds bizarre because I don't complain about my Natasha Denona palettes, which are also very expensive. I don't know why my mind works the way that it does, but so far I'm very impressed with these mattes. All right, so what do we want to do for the daytime look? This one's kind of tough because I really want to go in with this teal later, but I also, I mean, goodness, I love a taupey silver. That's such a beautiful metallic shade. Really pretty formula too. Nice and opaque, which I really like. So that would be a fun shade to add. You know what, we might just add this a little bit later when we go in with the green and go over the shades we're putting on right now. So we may end up trying every shade inside here. I want to keep it nice and warm though, so we're going to add a little bit of this coppery color to the outer half of the lid, and then we'll put this kind of peachy champagne on the inner half of the lid. This looks very orangey. Oh yeah, that's pretty pigmented. I mean, that's a pretty orange copper. It's not like a brassy orange. It's more of a like true orange. It's actually really pretty. I actually like the pigment of that one. It's a little bit more satiny in finish. It's not overly shimmery. Let's give this one a try. This peach shade right there, and then I might add just a little bit of depth to the lash line. I don't want to be too dark and smoky for this daytime look, but they're not like intensely metallic, which is not necessarily a bad thing. These remind me of a mature eyeshadow formula. So those of you that don't like something obnoxiously sparkly or metallic on your lids, I like that. But if you like your makeup to look a little bit more natural, a little bit more subtle, but to still be good quality and not be sheer, like that's what these remind me of. They're not sheer, they have good coverage in them, but they're not overly metallic. They look more like a wow, her eyes look pretty, rather than a wow, your eyeshadow looks pretty, because you're obviously wearing a lot of eyeshadow. I don't know if that description made sense. They kind of remind me of like the Persona formula or the NARS formula, although the NARS palette I do think has more variety in the finishes that it has. We'll see a bit later when I try out the silver, because I do think that one's a little bit more metallic as far as the finish goes. Let's just deepen up the outer corner a tiny bit more. I just want to add a little bit of smokiness right to the lash line with this dark brown right here. Again, I have a feeling later we're going to be topping most of this warm with a little bit of cool, so hopefully that doesn't end up looking weird. Just taking a little bit on the back end of that Persona brush and just lightly dusting it along the lash line. This is going on beautifully. Sometimes when you do this with a dark shade, you have to go in with a few layers to fix any initial patchiness. This is not patchy at all. Like, I'm getting really good, just even coverage across the board. I mean, it's just a good quality matte shadow. I can tell. Nice and deep. Do you see how even that is? That's not always the case. Even with some of my favorite eyeshadows like Juvia's Place or ColourPop, even on occasion, Sydney Grace, not all of Sydney Grace's shadows, most of hers are extremely good quality, but once in a while with a darker shade, I'll have one that is a tiny bit patchy when I first put it on, so I have to kind of layer a little bit. This is not that way. Just with what's left on the brush, I'm just kind of dragging the tiniest bit along the lower lash line. Okay, so that is going to do it for the shadow for the daytime look. I'm just gonna add a couple coats of mascara. Let's take my Tower 28 mascara. I'll add a few coats of this, then I'll come back, show you guys the look all finished and zoomed out, and then we'll finish off with the smoky look. All right, so here is my daytime look, all finished with mascara. No liner today. This is just the shadow and a couple coats of my Tower 28 mascara. I really like how this look turned out. I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking about the color story, at least of what I used so far. I probably have similar colors. Well, I definitely have similar colors within my collection, but one thing I do think that's really interesting about this specific look and those two shades, especially those shimmer shades that I used, the copper color and then the peach shade, they have a really interesting color to them where they're nice and warm, but they're a little bit more poppy and orange and vibrant than what I often get with a copper shade like this, but they're not so orange that they're bold. They're still natural and kind of neutral, but they have this like brightness to them that I think is really flattering. And that can be a tough thing to do, especially with coppers. I'm very picky with copper toned shadows. Sometimes I think they look too yellow or brassy, but I also don't want them to look too too red or orange. These are kind of right there in between. They're kind of like an orange creamsicle-y color that's soft and vibrant at the same time. I'm probably not making any sense. I always contradict myself when I try to explain myself, but hopefully you guys can see what I mean by that. I really think this is a beautiful daytime look. Very impressed with the quality of these. They are high quality, I can tell that. I didn't notice them to be powdery or unpigmented, which was one of the negative reviews I read about them on Sephora's website. Probably not this specific palette because they didn't have this one on Sephora, but some people had commented on some of their other palettes that they seemed a bit powdery and weak. I don't think these were powdery or weak. I was really happy with the quality of them. So this is look number one. Now let's zoom you guys in. We're gonna add to this one and create an evening look using some of those other shades. All right, so let's add a couple more shades. I really wanna work with this silver and this green. We're gonna start with the green. I'm a little worried about putting this silver on top of the oranges that are already there. Haven't yet made up my mind if I want to do that. So we're gonna start in the green shade first and kind of go from there. And try really hard not to disturb the mascara that I've already put on. So we're gonna go into this green with the back side of that Persona brush. This is the apply side. Ooh, this looks very, very pigmented, guys. Ooh, I love shades like this. So we're gonna kind of put this initially on top of where I put that dark brown. And then we'll slowly kind of build it up and feather it into the outer corner. Ooh, wow, that's pretty. I mean, it's really, really deep, but still pigmented. Definitely good quality. I mean, you can just tell, like just that first couple strokes of my brush, you can tell this is a good quality formula. I almost wish I would have been a little bit more light-handed going in initially. Wasn't quite expecting that. I mean, you look at the shade and it doesn't look super like extremely dark or rich, but it is very, very rich. So just be warned. That's pretty impressive. I'm gonna go back with the blending side of that brush. I just kind of wiped that off and just feather that around the edges. Trying to hold my brush kind of more upright so I don't disturb my mascara too much. Okay, let's go into the other side. Okay, so this one I'm actually pulling in a little bit further. I'll go back over here and pull that one in as well. I just want more of that green, just so it's all over this outer half of the lid and kind of ombre out to the corner where it's really dark. You can see as I'm kind of feathering that in that some of the green is showing up a little bit better where it's not quite as dark. That's beautiful though. Okay, I'm just gonna add the tiniest bit more to that brush. I'm gonna dab it onto the back of my hand to get most of the pigment off. And then I'm starting on again, the outer part and then just feathering some of that pigment in. So I'm just kind of taking what's left on the brush, kind of pulling some of that shadow in my outer corner lightly below the lower lash line just to get a nice shape right here, like to tie it down to my lower lash line. Really pretty. Okay, let's go into the silver. Just gonna take a little bit on my finger, and this we're going to run on like the outer 2/3 of the lid. It is still a little bit deep. I wouldn't call it deep, but it's not brightening, so I don't want to go too far in with this shade. If you like a really smoky look to go all the way in on your eye, I don't like that look on me, but if you do, I'm sure that would be beautiful with that shade. I just don't want to close off my eye too much, so we're gonna leave it there. I'm gonna take a clean pinky, kind of blend that along that edge of the silver. Then we're gonna go back to that peach shade, and I'm just gonna add a little bit more of this so that it can overlap where that silver starts. And now with a clean finger, I'm just going to tap that right on top of that, kind of that like that line where those two meet, just to make sure it's nice and blended or mushed together, so there's no obvious lines where one starts and one ends, especially because these are all such different undertones. I mean, we've got green, silver, and kind of a peach. Kind of an interesting look. I think that's pretty good though. I want to take just the tiniest bit more of that green shade and just go right along the lash line with this. Actually, you know what I want to do instead? Just gonna wipe off the back end of that brush. I'm gonna go into this brown. So let's tap a little bit of that on top of that smudge brush and take this along the lash line just at the outer corner. feather it up into that green a little bit. Oh, that's pretty. I think that's gonna do it. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of liner to my waterline. Let's just take my Wet n Wild liner. Actually, let's add just a little bit to the outer half of my lower waterline. And I'm just gonna close my eyes and I'm gonna kind of let those transfer between my two waterlines. I know this is really weird, but I do actually like to do this sometimes because I like a stamping of that darkness on my lower waterline. I just don't like it too inky and too rich to where it really like closes off my eyes. I just like it to add just a little bit of definition and smokiness. Okay, I'm gonna zoom you guys out. We'll take a look at the finished look and talk about my final thoughts on this palette. Okay, I am now ready for a night out. What do you guys think of the evening look? I think it's really, really beautiful. So my final thoughts on this palette, I'm pretty impressed with the formula. It's very good quality. I could just tell applying it, everything blended amazingly, like the perfect amount of pigment, nice and pigmented, but really easy to blend, no patchiness. I think the color story is really beautiful. I love both of the looks. The only thing I find myself kind of missing, and this is just a personal preference, is the shimmers are not overly metallic, which again, could be a good or a bad thing depending on what you're looking for in an eyeshadow. I am addicted to like metallic, sparkly eyelids. And the shimmers, at least in this specific palette, are a little bit more kind of like soft and slightly shimmery, a little bit more natural looking. That said, I know they have other palettes that had some duochromes in them, so some of their other palettes might have different finishes than this one has. But I do really like the looks. They were really easy to work with. I'm very impressed with the quality of these, the pigmentation. They're pretty good. I understand why these are a cult favorite. I would love to hear from you guys. How many of you guys have tried out this brand before? Have you had success with them? Did you love it? Did you not love it so much? Those of you that have tried out several of their palettes, if you have a recommendation, I am interested maybe in picking up another one. I definitely am not on board with this brand. Like, I was not disappointed with it, despite the fact that it's very small, especially for the price, but it has me curious now to maybe try another. So if you have a specific recommendation, leave that down in the comments below. I don't know that I officially want to join the cult yet, but I'm pretty impressed. You have my attention. But that's gonna do it for this video today. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys are all doing well. Let me remind you one last time, if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider doing that before you leave, and I will see all of you very soon in my next video. Bye. I have to go to the baseball meeting in Club Eyes. Just kidding, these aren't that. They're not that wild. Any of my viewers still live in the like work in the day, come home at night, go to the club, go to a party. I can't even imagine what that would be like. It is so not the lifestyle that I live, but hats off if that's you. Man, I get a little tired thinking about living that life. Wrong pinky.